Welcome to another episode of the Morning Almonds podcast. It's not breakfast, it's nourishment. The kind that feeds us through music, food, storytelling, and honest conversation. Let's get cracking. Welcome, friends, and I thank you so much for spending time with me today for the third episode of Morning Almonds. The title of this episode is Drum Luck, and we explore how music nourishes us by listening, performing, writing, and the raw bodily impact of live music. Today's guest, drummer Dave Melody, joins us to share his own journey through rhythm and resilience. I was originally going to include my musical journey in this episode. However, after we finished, I decided to just honor Dave's story and save mine for a later time. Early on, I asked Dave about Cliff Scurlock. Cliff was the original drummer for SlackJaw and went on to drum for the Flaming Lips for years. Before we talked to Dave, I wanted to mention a few recently attended concerts. I got to see The Urge at the Bottleneck in Lawrence on September 5th with my good friend and concert buddy Matt. That show was absolutely insane. Then there was the Revivalist at Voodoo Lounge in Kansas City October 4th, my first time seeing them. And then I caught Murder by Death on their farewell tour, October 16th at Liberty Hall. That was in Lawrence with my good friend Nathan, who was visiting me for a week. That brings us to today's guest. I want to introduce Dave Melody from Lawrence, Kansas. He's a drummer. He's drummed for SlackJaw, Truth Cell, and I believe the Border Band, if my research is good.
That's correct.
Awesome. And then I know Dave also has a couple current projects that I'm going to let him talking about. But Dave, welcome to the Morning Almonds podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, and first of all, I just want to say what a great last name for a musician.
Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to my aunt yesterday because I was questioning her, in our family on my father's side, was there anybody really into music? And she was like, really little self-taught, but not much. And she said, considering our great last name, you would think that there would be somebody. So I guess I'm the first drummer, but yeah.
What is your earliest musical memory then?
Gosh, when I was really young, I have a faint memory of pulling a drum set out of the trash that was down the street. I grew up in Castle Rock, Colorado, and it was very sparsely populated then. But there was a Muppet drum set that had Animal on the front, and I was just attracted to it. I don't know how old I was, but I grabbed that thing and I brought it home without telling my parents. And I hid it in the basement and was trying to play on it. And they, kind of figured out that I guess I like drums. But I just really just love music from an early age. And we had a piano in our house. Nobody really played it. My mom and dad did put me and my brothers into lessons when we were young. But I just really love the radio, everything about it. And at the time, on TV, there was a show out of Broomfield, Colorado on the PBS station. It was called Teletoons, and it was before MTV. And they would just show videos, and there was some abstract ones. I remember the Fish Heads song, Fish Heads. That video was on there, but then there was like early Def Leppard and Depeche Mode, and it was just really run like it was just like one of the first video shows, really, and on a shoestring budget too. But they that kind of I would just Saturday or Sunday mornings it would be on for 2 hours, and I'd get home from church and it would just run down there and try to catch it. And that also led me into Dr. Demento, which I used to stay up as late as I could on. I think that was Sunday nights to try to tape it. And my parents did buy my brother a cassette tape, had a stereo, a boombox, the cassette tape, and we would tape the Dr. Demento show as much as we could. And that led me into trying to do my own radio shows because I just loved listening to radio. So I would make our own cassettes. I do commercials and ads, and then record music off of the radio station. So it was never really that good, but my wife, we did find a tape a while ago, and it was pretty funny.
I can remember doing that too, taping off there. But yeah. So what was So the video show, what was the first band that like because me and you met, and I was wearing 311 stuff, and I remember specifically, you told me that Chad was the reason that you bought a piccolo snare. If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it was that was a time I remember, God, in the '90s, the wave of music, because I love reggae music and I love the kind of combination of, and Red Hot Chili Peppers back then were just so great, and just that, and it was a great different sound. And at the moment, I was, as a drummer, I was trying to copy and replicate, and then to be able to be like, okay, that's how they got that sound. It's not just a really high snare, it's a piccolo snare. And it was, there was a whole sound. And to me, that was a really magical time in music, because there was so much going on between hip hop, jazz fusion into rock and roll, and then heavy metal. And it was like the end of glam rock, which as a kid, I really loved glam rock and stuff like Rat and like Motley Crue, like when I was, and later I'm like, Motley Crue, yeah, not so much, I don't know. But I remember we had a record day in elementary school where you could play records, and I brought Shout at the Devil, because I really, and I wasn't allowed to play it because of these satanic overtones, which is really hilarious, because they're really not satanic. But
what was your like my band was 311. That's the one that I latched onto early on, and just like, was there one band that just like, man, got you, or was it just a combination of everything?
God. Well, as when I first got in, I think Van Halen really got me going. But as a drummer, as I kept going on, I got into Rush, and I have to say, Rush was always there for me. And it was one of those bands like a lot of people didn't like, and it was one of those things. I love to find music that nobody else was listening to a lot of times, and just kind of be my thing. But with Rush, I just kept finding Tom Sawyer, that just intro blew my mind. And so I got in then, and then it was just like I go back and find their old stuff, and it was just like, wow, man, the guy is so good. And like today, my good friend from Colorado I grew up with, he sent me a link that said the surviving members they're coming back out on tour. And I was just like, man, it just made my day. And I can't remember the name of the drummer, but her name, it escapes me. But I'm like, this is awesome. They got a young girl playing Neil's part. They're going to add in keyboard players so they can free up Geddy. But yeah, that going back to that band really influenced me in a lot of directions. But I was also went through like jazz band and concert band as a kid, starting at 4th grade. And so I think the technical aspect of Rush kind of fit in there with me. And because in jazz band too, you're playing these pieces of music that you would never really didn't listen to yourself, but got into some of that kind of aspect. And they touch on that, like there's the odd times and things like that really for me were like, this is not your normal stuff, but it spoke to me.
Yeah. So in jazz band was drums. Is that the only, you mentioned piano, but drums, piano, what else? Anything else?
Yeah, I did in 4th, my parents put us in piano lessons, me and my brothers. I have an older brother and a younger brother. And we did it for like 2 years, and as really young, but then in 4th grade, you were allowed to pick an instrument, and I went straight to the drums. And they give you, it was like $100 back then, which was a lot, and it got a snare drum in a plastic big case with a stand, and I had to put that thing on my skateboard and push it to school, because we walked to school. But every once a week or twice a week it was, and it was like, it kind of taught me a lot about being a drummer. Like, you're going to have to carry some stuff. Man.
Yeah,
really,
right.
That kind of is still true today. But that was symphonic band, and I thought it was the coolest thing just to hear the snares, all of us playing. But I think like some early memories is we lived next to a high school, Douglas County High School in Castle Rock. And every fall, summer and fall, you'd hear the drum line just warming up. And it's just, they're just doing straight rudiments, but you could hear it. And it just echoed through our neighborhood. And I think that might have had some back in the back of my head worked on me. But I just loved the sound of the snare drum. And so in fourth grade, did that. And then so you had concert band, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. And then you move into junior high and it gets a little more expanded. Then they had stage band, which was like the early jazz band. So you're doing Jay Chataway, I think, is the guy who would take all these songs and rewrite them for junior high kids. And that was really fun. And that's where I met a bass player who we started a band in high school called Faded Notion. But then we just did covers and stuff. We did some Rush. We did Steve Miller Band. And we never really played out, but we would practice at least once a week over at a friend's house. And we had a really, it just had that band feeling. But we did, I also did marching band when I got into high school. And marching band was really, that was tough because I don't know, helped, I think it helped me a lot later. It taught me you really got to work things out. And it's just like, it sounds boring. You're just doing these rudiments, but you do them to strengthen your hands and your body. And I remember in high school, our first drum instructor, this guy, Rob, I can't remember his last name, but this guy probably should not have been around children. And we'd have our drum practices and he'd get in your face and he'd be smoking a cigarette right in your face. And he'd go up and he'd try to break you by getting in your face because he's saying drumline, it's very serious and it's like no facial expression. And he'd grab onto your drumstick, and if you're holding it too lightly, he'd throw it across the parking lot and then tell you to go F and get that.
You can cuss.
Yeah, okay. So then he'd get in your face and you're like, and half the times he'd come up and sometimes he'd smile and you just didn't know what he was going to do. And I remember one Saturday morning for a early band practice, had to go to the a band room, and I opened up the door, turn on the lights, and in the back band office, I see someone light a cigarette, and it's like the guy was sleeping in there too at night. But he yelled at one of I was a freshman, it's like 15 years old, 14, and one of the seniors at one of our practices tried to run him over with his car, actually, because he got so mad at him. He threw his mallets and he told him to do a lap, and the guy just took his bass drum off, got in his car, and then drove like really fast by us and almost hit him.
Damn.
He left after we had a band director change, and then we had a guy named Steve Yates who came in from Los Angeles. And this guy introduced all these white kids from Colorado to funk and Tower of Power. There's a band. And he taught us how to lay back on the beat. And that was really important because, you're just like playing this stuff. But he was really a big drumline guy, got paid professional to do that as a professional. But he worked with our high school, but he also gave lessons. So I got to take lessons from this guy for about 2 years, which was very, very formative and helpful. But the guy, he just could teach, a bunch of white kids how to lay back on a beat and get funky, and he'd just have fun with you guys. It was great. And then he was one of those guys too that was like, we had a group of kids, which drumline taught me that you bring them in there, and we had some of our kids who had handicaps, so they couldn't even walk right, but we still marched, and kids who never picked up music before, but after a while, which taught me you can really, in the right settings, you can learn anything. And the guy was just great about that. And I don't know where he is today, but I'm sure he's still doing music with Drumlines, the professional tours that they do. And that was one of the first times that I went. There was a thing called Drums Along the Rockies, and that was where they have professional drum corps come, and they had a competition at Mile High Stadium, which doesn't exist anymore. But I cried the first time because they were so good that just tears running down my face. But but that's through like high school like symphonic band, jazz band, and marching band. And then when I went to KU, I tried out. I was a drum captain in my marching band in high school, and then you go KU, and I was like, and you try out, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to get snare, like I was playing in high school, and nope. Like you go to a big pond and and I barely made it into the drum line, but I was the second to the largest bass drum. And my best friend who I came here with, who was also an amazing drummer, he was on the cymbal line. And it was just like, it was kind of, it knocked you down a peg, but you got to play with some really amazing people. But these people, most of them were studying that to become, like, that's what they wanted to do, to be, teach, to get their music degree. And strangely enough, I didn't want to get a music degree. I love playing drums. And so after my freshman year, I got out of that because I found SlackJaw, a punk band.
Yeah.
And I realized I love music, but there's part of it that's almost like a job that I didn't want it to be. I wanted to just enjoy playing. And like with the marching band, it was great, but it was so much work that I thought I was like overwhelming. And then I didn't get the rush I got from playing with just music.
That's what I was going to ask you about is how you got to Lawrence and how you found SlackJaw. And so that, man, you painted a great picture on how you got to that. So talk to me about the timeline of you and Cliff Scurlock as drummers in SlackJaw. Was Cliff before you? Tell me about that.
Okay. Cliff was before me, and I had no idea who these guys were. And I was living in a house with two other drummers, and we had all our drum sets in the basement.
And this is in Lawrence?
Yes, this is in Lawrence. Okay. It was on Kentucky Street, 1138, I believe, is the house.
Right on.
And we, one of the drummers, he was getting his music major, Matt, and then me and my buddy, we just had our drums. And that was like my first year up here from Colorado. I didn't have my drum set, and I felt just hollow. And because I get home from school, I sit on my kit for an hour usually, and then to not have that drove me crazy. So I finally got it moved up here. We had them set up in a basement on top of flats because the basements would leak water. So we had just wooden flats down, and we had barely any room from our heads. So we're sitting there, and you couldn't go too high with your sticks or you'd hit the roof. But one day, Shane Murray, this guy comes by, and he goes, I found a house of drummers. And he came up, and he just came up, knocked on the door, and was like, hey, any of you guys want to play in a band? And I happened to be there. And I did not know Shane was not in the band at that moment, but he found me and like kind of showed up because Cliff left right before that and just kind of had some parting ways with members of the band, which I completely get now after playing in that band. It's the same reason that band didn't last.
Right.
It was conflict of interest and stuff. But Shane brought me over there, and we rehearsed at the Canterbury House up on campus, which was the Episcopalian house where students could live for free. And he was a student at the time, and we did a rehearsal there. And he got in trouble because it was during finals week, I guess, because everyone was trying to study him, and we were so loud. And that I tried out and got in, and it was like all of a sudden I'm part of this cool thing. Like these guys got to play at the Outhouse and open up for Tool, and at that point Tool was like this on the edge. I barely knew who they were, but I was like, that is really cool stuff. But they were in a punk scene that was just off the charts. But we got to play with, once we got into that band, we're playing with other local Lawrence bands and Kansas City bands, and all of us are from different genres. Everybody, when you played a show, there would be a punk band, and then maybe a kind of a hippie jam band, and then this, and then you'd have your all punk shows as well. But like the Bottleneck and all the surrounding bars, it was like a flow of different music. And then when a national act would come in, a local band would open up for these national acts. So for me, that blew my mind when you like get to share the stage with, like Clutch, and we were at Liberty Hall. I remember the first time playing at Liberty Hall, and Clutch was they were just getting really going, but it was with Bad Religion, and a lot of these bands I didn't know, and I had to kind of go back and be like, who are they? And like they'd be like, they're really big in our scene, because I wasn't too familiar with the punk scene.
Sure.
Because I came from a kind of different scene, and but got in, and we would just be playing. Kansas City, I think I played with every ska band that existed. And it was so funny because we were always with ska bands, and we'd go to St. Louis and we'd be with these ska bands, but it was so exciting because at any time there'd be an opportunity. And there was also house parties all over that you could play, because the noise ordinance in Lawrence did a lot of damage, I think, to the music scene. And it made it very hard, I think, for kids today, and still is hard for musicians. Yeah. We rehearse out of town in all my bands, basically, because it's finding a spot in town is really hard, and then the noise ordinance is not the same. But
I can remember when I first got to Lawrence, and I moved to Lawrence in '94.
Okay.
And then
that was great time
dude, it was a great time. But here's the thing, Dave, is I was too involved in the college scene to really know what the fuck was going on musically in Lawrence. It took me until I flunked out of KU and I went to Ottawa University in Ottawa, Kansas, and I kind of stepped away from Lawrence. And then I was able to look back in and be like, holy shit. Yeah. Look at everything going on. And so, I remember those basement parties. I remember going rap parties down in basements. Great time.
Great time. Yeah. It's amazing how KU, working up there for years with the students, at the frat house when I was cooking there, they really don't go off of campus. And, and I kind of get it, but then you realize there's a whole different scene out there. And boy, Lawrence, all you have to do is go to the Bottleneck and look at all those old pictures on the wall, and you're like, wow, it's just mind-blowing. And all those bands, though, had local bands open up for them. So you got to work with tour managers who treated you like garbage, and sound men who so you got to see what it's like. But then you also learn how to be professional. It taught you how to be, to get into it.
So then SlackJaw breaks up.
SlackJaw, we had SlackJaw. We were set to go to Austin, Texas to play. We've been accepted into South by Southwest, which was at that time how you go and get found by a label. Yeah. And at this time too, like you had Stick and Paw, who had just been signed, and you're like, wow, they're making. You come to find out later that the labels just ripped them off, and then they end up having to pay. Yeah. But so that kind of disintegrated. But then between that, we took the singer from SlackJaw, Skinny D, Doug Richards is his name, and Shane Murray, who was a guitar player who got me into SlackJaw, and me and myself, and then we had our friend George Burns, and I'm missing another name, but we started a band called Creeper. Okay. And this was like, as Shane calls it, the first stoner rock band out there, because that was our thing, was we were getting high and we'd smoke a joint. We'd write on the stage at Bottleneck, our first show. We put a bunch of televisions up and we showed Iron Man, the Tetsu, the Iron Man. Yeah. It's a Japanese crazy art film. And then we were all smoking our doobies, and then we had like 5 songs, and it was kind of new music too. I added like a singer we brought out more drums so he could play too. So it was more kind of tribal, and we were kind of stealing from a lot of stuff that was kind of going on at the time. But, and that didn't last too long. I don't know what happened, but that turned into Truth.
It was Truth
and
at
then,
first.
The Truth at first, and then the cigarette ad companies came out, the Truth, and we're like, we can't be that. We got to be Truth Cell.
Okay.
And then that was like, and then it was kind of like this political And gosh, it would be more fitting now almost.
Well,
but
Dave, I tell you what, I listened to the album the other night because I was trying to find some old SlackJaw, and I have a couple of Bottleneck CDs where they got a bunch of bands, and like you said, there's so many different genres of bands on those CDs, which is awesome. So I was able to find that, but the album is called, and I don't know if I'm saying it right, but Burroughs Sacrifice the King. And it's on Spotify for those of you that want to hear it. And it is an excellent, excellent album. It really is. Your drumming on that is incredible. There's only 8 songs on that album, but A Man Called True, Above Black, Evolution number 23, Fury of Lee Mung Chow. It's a great fucking album. Yeah. And you're right. I love the political stuff in there. I love all the intros, and it's very fitting for today's times. Yeah. But I'll digress back to you.
No, and that was a really good time, real exciting. We had a lot of member changes go through that band, which made it very difficult, and with any band, it does. And we were kicking along, and with that band, we got into a couple of Metal Maniacs, the magazine. We were featured in that, and also through that, we had a kind of a manager, and I got into Downbeat magazine, which as a drummer, it's a huge magazine, and it was a small little feature, but we were getting things rolling, and we had a whole change in the band where every guitar player, bass player, and singer kind of changeover, and we brought in all these new guys, and at a point in it was just a hard point in my life, looking back on it, but it had to happen. I just kind of walked away from it because it just, for me, I remember it showing up to a rehearsal and being teaching these songs to basically a whole new band that's not the band. And it kind of made me go, we should be a different band.
Yeah.
But we weren't. And I walked away from that, and, regrettably to some aspects, but it just what happened. And through that whole time, I was playing in the Border Band, which was the other Americana blues country band.
Totally different from anything you've done before, band-wise.
Exactly. Yeah. So the whole time I'm doing hardcore, and the weekends I'm driving with these guys when I'm free up to Manhattan and playing biker bars. And we put out 7 albums, and 3 of those are double discs.
Okay.
But there's some stuff on there that's really, really good, and play with a bunch of different musicians, and every once in a while I'll pick that stuff up. And I love the guys from that band. Those guys Melvin Litton, the singer, songwriter, the Gothic Cowboy, amazing man. He'd give you the shirt off his back.
Yeah.
But he set us up to, he worked hard as a union carpenter, and he put his money basically into doing these albums and buying equipment so we could tour, and really, it just amazing. And and we did that, gosh, as long as we could, until it just became too hard, lugging and touring, doing all that. And he was getting older, retired, and he's still doing his Gothic Cowboy thing by himself. He does it over in Lawrence, Kansas, in North Lawrence. He does a show, the Gothic Cowboy Review. And him and he just does a singer-songwriters, and they just gather.
Yeah. And
so it's kind of like they kick the drummer and the bass player out. Not really, but you could look at it that way. But it's that was a great band, too, in different respects, because the guy was such a perfectionist that we would work on a song, and then he'd be like, can you do this? And he would have you literally break you down until you. Well, sometimes I would just be like, oh, I have no idea what I'm thinking. And then you could come up with some parts and something completely off the wall. And it was so frustrating at the time. But then when we get through it, it'd be like, wow, man, we got something really cool.
Yeah. Well, Dave, let me switch gears here real quick, because this is something that I want to know, and you're the perfect person to ask, is how do you write music for drums? I did a little bit of research. How do you write music for drums? How do you come up with something to put down? How the fuck does that happen?
You know, I think it's just me listening to so much music as a child, and then when I first started playing, all I tried to do was mimic other players. But then getting in, it's just for me, it's like what groove feels right and how that is picked. I cannot explain.
Okay.
I guess put it in words, but it's just like a lot of times it depends on who I'm working with. If it's my own, if it's a group where I get control on it, then I just kind of go whatever I feel like and like what's kind of in my head at the moment, what's kind of got me grooving. Like if it's a lot of tom stuff, I'll be like sometimes I just want to do something that's really cool, tom heavy, and using tom toms and kind of go there. But I'll ask people like when I'm playing with them, and it's like I played with the guy named Sky Smead who does a lot of stuff, and I did some recording for him, and I would try to throw in my own stuff, and no, this is what I want, and it's like, okay,
Right.
and it's sometimes it's hard to be like, well, I am a drummer, but you got to go, this is what the artist wants, but just it's always just I think it's been instinctual in some form for
Okay.
me on how that comes out.
Yeah.
Because like if I just like hear the guitar riff and I'm like, okay, or a vocal, and it's sometimes it just could be the bass line because they say the bass and the drums are partners, but a good guitar riff, you just hear it and I'm like, okay, I know what I want to do in my head, and just kind of go from there. And then it changes though too. I guess from I'll start something out, and then by the end, it's one way or the other. And like with our latest Truths, They Watch Us from the Moon stuff, we recorded basically 3 songs 2 years ago. We've been going through memory changes and playing these same songs, and I realize I'm playing the songs different than I am on the album.
Wow. Yeah.
And so part of me has to kind of go, well, I need to stay true to whatever we're going to sell as a product. But playing live, I'm like, yeah, after a while, it kind of fits in, and it feels right, or it's right for the piece. And it depends, how much you really work a song, because God, you could take
Okay.
a song and just keep working it, and there's such a thing as overworking it. I really believe, and that I think that's what a lot of musicians and artists can struggle with is when do you stop and be like, that's done.
Well, I'll tell you what, just getting ready for this interview, I was like, dude, put it to bed. Like, I've done enough research. I've done enough things. I'm preparing. I'm going to sit here and lay in bed all night or just put it to bed. It's done, and what we're going to have is going to be great. So before we get into They Watch Us from the Moon, one more question about drumming.
Yeah.
How are drummers so easily able to, so like when Chad broke his arm when they were in Australia back, I think in 99, Josh Freese sat in for 311 on that tour. How can a guy just come in there and get behind a kit and fit in like that, man? Explain that to me.
I think that just goes back to what kind of music you love. If that guy, and I guess your past with music, because basically a lot of early stuff you're just mimicking, like in concert band and jazz band, you're playing other people's parts literally. But to a lot of extent, even in jazz band, they give you notation, but you're just kind of free to come up with what that is.
Okay.
And with music though, being a set time and stuff, you're locked in on this and so many beats per measure. So that's very helpful. Like I'm playing a party for a friend here, and I've had to learn 12 songs. And one of the songs, a drummer drops a beat in the recording, and that means they go out of time.
Okay.
So, and that drives me crazy. And not because, and actually to my core, because if you're trying to replicate something, which a lot of drumming is, it's basically playing it then when someone does that, then you're like, okay, how am I going to count that? And that the person's not trying to do that. They just did it and recorded it that way. And it's not like Rush where it's a 7/8 time where 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1 2 3. Like it's meant to be this way. So I think a lot of that has to go back to once you are locked in drums, it's kind of thing I've heard about some guitar players, like the really great ones, get to a point and they don't think about it as the numbers. You just do it. But it has to come from a place of, I think, intense practice and training
100%.
your body and your hands in certain ways.
Well, and like you said earlier, you know all the hard stuff you were doing in the marching corps band, you knew it was leading up to something and it was training you, and and I think that's so important. And it sucks that it takes us to get older before we realize that everything we're doing is for the next step. But once you get there, it's awesome, right? Like when you know you're in there.
And that's something, like I've had a lot of people be like going, hey, I'd like to take lessons. And my first thing I will say to them is get a drum pad and sticks and just start. Find your fulcrum and on how to hold your stick. And then it's so boring. It's mind-numbingly boring, but you just got to do your right, left. But that is the basis of it. And it's just training muscle and mind memory. And that turns into fills, like, and from marching band to like heavy metal, you're going to run into some of the same riffs, and it's connected.
The instrument that I played was the flute, and I picked the flute in junior high because that's where the girls were at, Dave. And so I even if I was last chair, I was still hanging out with the girls. But by the time I got to be a senior, I said, I want to try drums. And the band director was like, well, here's the tri-toms. And so they, I can still remember that beat that we would do for like parades and shit, but that as far as I knew, So after the Border Band.
Okay, so I basically kind of flubbed around with just some, like there was a heavy metal band called Cocknoose.
Yeah.
That I went in and I was excited about being a part of that. And then I got in, like, I missed one rehearsal. I couldn't be there and I got kicked out of the band. And
okay.
One of the, sometimes you get to run into some musicians. I've run into people who don't like drummers. And like, that was a problem in SlackJaw.
Why do you think that is?
The guitar player didn't like Cliff and then was anti-drummer for some reason. And I was like, Cliff's mom passed away tragically.
Yes.
Yet he purchased all their equipment and made what they did possible.
Oh, wow.
And he also helped other bands through because with that money. And the Cliff was amazing.
Yeah.
And so I was always like under this, it was like, what's going on? Half the band was like, just ignore that noise. But then I hit it again in another band and I was just like, okay, you know what? It's one of those things. Some people aren't going to like you. I find out in life, there's nothing you can do about it. Just, stick to who you are. But that was the part about Cliff that blew me away because I was like, he's an amazing drummer. He's gone on to do many amazing things.
Yeah.
And, but, I got out of that and basically, it was dysfunctional because when you're in a band, you're like my wife, we talked about this, you're like dating how many people, like you're like in a relationship.
Okay.
And my wife, after going on road with us when I was in True Sale and stuff, and she's witnessed what's going on, she's like, and she's big into the punk scene, loves music. She was like, I don't understand how bands even exist because there's so many little aspects. And if one thing goes wrong, this can be this. And it's like, for a group to make it, it takes a lot. And a lot of it's got to be luck too.
Yeah.
But because, you have somebody quit or someone, is just not happy or someone's at a different point in their life. And, it's crazy, the influences that can affect a band.
That's an awesome take.
And I'm sorry I got way off a topic there, but
no. This is great.
But yeah, that's like Cocknoose going back, and then that got out of that. I started playing with a couple other bands. I remember Charlie Wolf, who used to play in a funk band in Lawrence, and the name is escaping me right now. He's going to be very angry with me. And my buddy Rob Pope, who played with me in the Border Band for a while, we started a trio band, and just Charlie played bass in the funk band, but he is a amazing guitar player. So we set up at Gaslight Gardens when it opened, and we would just play Tuesdays. They just knew the owner, and he's like, can we just, not only do an open mic, can we just go and play and jam? And we started doing that every Tuesday, and we would play for 4 hours and just do whatever we wanted. And
nice.
But after a while, we had that place packed, and it was great. But that's Automatic Wolf, that band, and I'm still those two guys, Rob and Charlie. I brought them into They Watch Us from the Moon, who are currently with me in that band.
Okay.
But also between then, I played with a guy named Outlaw Jake Lichtai.
Yeah, I know that name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a good friend of mine. We've been friends for a long time. And Outlaw Jake, and I was in the Chain Gang, and we did an album. And I was listening to it the other day, and it was one of my favorite albums. It's didn't finish all the mixing on the recording, but God, that guy can write some really good songs. And that was one of my favorite drumming wise albums. I'm like, this one should be more circulated. It's a great album. Gosh, and Sky Smead, who plays, he's on a lot of bills right now. He does his own kind of like Americana stuff. And when he would have a band for a while, I was his drummer. We used to play Knuckleheads a lot, and and we got to open up for some big country acts too, which I thought was amazing, to see these guys come in flip flops and Hawaiian shorts and do their sound check, and then countrify and come back with their hats on and stuff. And I was like, and they're all from New York City, and they're all music majors, and I'm like, oh, okay, sure. I get it. It's a money gig. I get it. But I did some stuff with him, and that was a lot of fun. But like in that situation too, I love that guy, but I couldn't do one show, and he kind of like moved on from me, and I was like, see, it's kind of how we need people to play. And it was just one show, and it was like, God, I got to miss out on that one. But one door closes, another one opens, and that's how I've always felt with music. And like the band Flucto is another band who's Chubby Smith, who was an old cat in town. He was on the first Border Band album. He recorded our first Border Band album. He also had a big band called the Chubby Smith 5 Orchestra. And he called me over because he has a really cool studio out in Perry. It's a tractor farm, old, just huge building, but it's all guitars that he's made. He's got over 200 guitars, and he's made most of them. But he's got organs, and it's this cool eclectic place. But he's an engineer. He goes, "Can you come over and tune my drums?" And I went over to tune my drums, and the next thing you know, I'm in a band with him. And it was like that. He goes, and that was his plan. He's like,
right,
gotcha.
Yeah.
And I was like, and that was a couple years ago. But me and him and David Kataforis, and he plays bass, and that band is called Flucto, Flucto. But that's another current band that I'm playing in right now, project. And that band is different from any other band I do, because we go show up to rehearse. He hits record, and he has the old mixing board from the lead center.
Oh, wow.
That when they got their new one, I helped them move it to his place. And I'm like, can you imagine all the people who've played through that thing? We go in there, and he just starts recording. And he also sets up cameras, and he hits recording. So every one of our rehearsals, we recorded. And then he would sit down and work late in the hours and mix stuff together and take it apart. And next thing you know, we had an album without doing the hard way of just like, all right, writing it, going to someone else, paying them a truckload of money, and then doing it this way. And God, he made it so easy. As we go in there, and then I could go in and do like a bell track, or we go in and do backup vocals, and it was just like so not stressful as opposed to going into a studio where you're dropping a lot of money, and a lot of times you kind of take good or bad what you did.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. Right.
And that could be that's a whole nother can of, worms right there.
So was that's the easiest album you've ever recorded?
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah. And that's at fluctorock.com. I was just, doing this process and you sending me the information, and I sat down and take a look at some of the bands I've been in and then all the albums you've done. And I was like, yeah, there's quite a lot there. And it goes over, a good amount of time. And, that goes to, and I'm like, how did I get away with doing it so long? And that has to do with, my wife being very cool.
Yes.
But I've always, I think, doing music, I always felt like I took a job that at any moment I could leave it.
Yeah.
If things were good, that good.
For sure.
And nothing's ever gotten that. But at the same time, I look at it, they've all been good because I've got tons of experience and I'm still playing music. I maybe not be on a tour bus, yet. Still could happen.
Yeah.
But, I've done a lot of small mini tours and done things. And that's a whole, going out and being a weekend warrior when you were 20-something. It's a lot easier than when you're a little bit older, and I, God, for the longest time was like afraid that if I had kids, I have a child, a boy now, it's 7, best thing ever. And I wish I wouldn't have been in a state of my mind of being like afraid that if I did this, then I won't be able to do that. And that, may have happened that way, but like, me and my wife, we had our kid late in life, as in our 40s, basically, and my wife's 40, so I'm closer to over 50. But, just playing music, though, I thought about it with the guy Chubby, who brings me back to this point where his wife was like, you need to go find some friends. And he's like, musicians don't really have friends. We do have bandmates.
Yeah.
And it's like, you need to go get a new band. And like, we're all friends, but it's like, but we do this. And it's like, talking to Shane Murray from, I played in those other projects. If we weren't doing what we're doing together, we'd still be doing something in some fashion with music like that. And it's like, it's what you do. And I think it goes back to being a little kid with a snare drum, pushing it up the hill on my skateboard. It's like other kids didn't have to do that. And it's just, but this was a part of it. It's part of it. It may not be playing the instrument, but there's work involved in it. And it's just a part of it. And, and it becomes ingrained in you. And so like rehearsing, like I'm one of those, I've been in bands where let's just get up and play on stage. I'm not like that. Bands need to be polished and be good in my, and like working it out on stage is unacceptable. You want to have your stuff ready for audience.
Yeah.
And that comes back from marching band and from concert band. And it's just, you don't, and even like jazz band, whatever, like you're making, stuff up. You're not really, you have your set ideas and where you're going in those pieces and whatnot. But, like doing the open mic jams, that was fun because then you just kind of, it is what it is. And once you get to a point you're playing with competent musicians, then you can go, but like in the blues, you have a set what you're playing. So in that parameter, you can do these things. And so you're kind of still held to set rules.
Sure.
But I did go way off there.
No, you're fine, man. So talking about Shane, because I met both you and Shane working as my primary job as a food safety inspector, and I met both you guys in that realm. Talk to me about food real quick. What is your background with food? When did you first start cooking? Tell me about that.
Most of it's through, my first job was like with food, I guess. Well, in high school, I worked at a golf club at Castle Pines, and it was in the men's locker room. You're like, men's locker room? Well, we were in Sports Illustrated in 1989 for the best men's locker room. I'm not a golf guy, not into it. I find it completely boring. But
Sure.
that job,
Me too.
I made more money in high school, and I was 15, 16 years old. My job was you go in there, and it was Castle Pines Golf Club, and the richest of the rich were there. I had John Elway and Dan Reeves, the football guys, were members. Pat Bolin, who owned the Denver Broncos, was a member, and just a strew of rich people. And they would come in. I had a shirt and tie, and I worked in the shoe room, and also valet parked, but also did airport runs where you drive out onto airport runway and pick these guys up off their private jets. And I'm like, how many times these guys would be like, how old are you? And I'm like, 16, sir. Is that old enough to drive? Yes, sir. And I'm in a Cadillac, station wagon, green Cadillac. It was leather, but they come in, you take their shoes off their feet, and you shine them, and you just like the locker room manager, Tom Horrell from Chicago, every other word was fuck. What the fuck are you doing? Holy fucking shit. And he was gray hair, but he was like 35 years old, but he knew everybody, and anybody walked in there, he knew them, what they liked. But he taught me how to bartend at 16. And,
Nice.
And that job made tons of money, but that job, I bought most of my Neil Peart phase, where I was buying as many drums as I could to be Neil Peart. And that afforded that. But I had to work with the food aspect on that as well. I'm trying bartending, food. And the kitchen was scary as hell to me at that time. Those guys were just like, it's a professional, very professional food coming out of there. And like, what is this kid coming in there? What do you need? But, they had to deal with me because I had to bring food to these guys. But I left there to go to KU, and when school, I was like, school's not working out too well for me. And the music major I'm not going to do, and my English major, but I needed a job so I could have my own apartment and do whatnot. I got a job at Rudy's Pizzeria.
No shit.
And I worked with Chad Glazer, the owner, and my buddy Greg, who was a drummer also. He got me the job. He was the driver, but I didn't have a car, so I got into the pizza making.
Okay.
But that's where I met. I was working the counter too, and that's where I met Melvin Litton, because him and Roger came in to play one Saturday, and I was just blown away. I'm like, there's musicians in here. I'm like, awesome. And I'm like, do you guys need a drummer? And they're like, yeah. And so that's where I met those guys and got into the Border Band. That's how that started.
Wow.
Out of Rudy's.
Okay.
But started cooking pizza there. Did that for 7-8 years, and then got out of there. And every food job, it was through a band member or mate. Because at the time, I went to Teller's, which was an Italian restaurant, and that was with other band guys. And all these gigs were just so you could find somewhere to work during the day and have your nights off. And everybody worked with each other, so all the restaurants were all band.
Yeah.
Like all of them. And most people that were like, any daytime gig you could get was the best, because you needed your nights off.
Yeah.
For your rehearsal and then your gigs on the weekend. But yeah, so basically I ended up just basically doing food through trying to become a musician. And it was the best way to do that, because like construction, I did that too for a while. That's just really hard.
Yeah.
Being too exhausted all the time. But with working in a restaurant, you could also, pay your rent, but also have something to eat at the end of the day. And it was huge. But that's, like everybody, like Shane and all these guys, we were all worked in the restaurants in one fashion or another. And they were all, and it's just kind of funny how it just kind of continued on through that and through my life. And it was one aspect where I could do it anywhere if you're good at it, and and be able to play music too. And that was kind of my thinking behind that, and it kind of really stuck with it. But also, I got into food with baked I got a job at the Merc where I went in to become a cook, and they put me in the bakery And that was like the best thing for me because I really, that's where I'm at now. I'm as a baker, and I'm the happiest I've been.
Awesome,
and
Dave.
I'm working for the school district, because and that to me comes back to a point of it's really important to be happy in what you're doing. Because I've been in bands where I haven't been happy and it doesn't work out, and been jobs I've stuck around. I did a job for too long under bad conditions, and it wasn't the kids I was working with; it was other aspects. And boy, to get out from under that and that weight off your shoulders, there's nothing like it. And to feel good doing what you do, like, knowing that I'm feeding kids that might be their only meal of the day, and that's a sad fact, and it's crushing. But to be able to help in that aspect, and it's different from cooking for a bunch of rich kids. But even then, you're still giving nourishment and feeding kids, and and besides that, talking to, but it's a whole different level. But my job I'm doing now, I get to also work with special needs kids, and like some days it makes me want to cry because it just makes you thankful for what you got, and that there's people who are doing what they're doing too. But it's sad that it needs more funding, and they need to put more money into paying the cooks and chefs that feed our children.
Absolutely.
But I do love what I'm doing now, and that's basically baking for the whole school district. And I get to deliver all the food to the schools, get to see the kids every day. And it's after having a kid, I really it became so much more important to me. I don't know what it was, but they say, if you have kids, it changes everything. But it changed my whole aspect. It changes everything, how you feel, how you look at things.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just been nothing but, a blessing.
Man, that's awesome, Dave.
Yeah. No, I feel like right now it's one of those moments I'm in a good place, and that's, you don't realize you're not in a good place till sometimes you get out of from some another place, and you're like, yeah.
So let's maybe change gears then a little bit, and then let's talk about maybe some of those hard challenges that you've had, if you want to, and what that was.
One of the toughest ones in my life would be, like, my older brother's 2 years older than me, and growing up, I was always Bill's younger brother, and he is the golden child. He is good at sports. He's smart. Girls love him. And always under his shadow, but I will say maybe music was the one thing I did that he didn't do, and I might have had some reason why but musically, I was just gravitated towards music. But when I started doing drums, my parents were my dad is very strict, not the kind of guy to give you a hug, but he loved you, because, but would never tell you that.
Yeah, right.
But growing up, music, my mom and dad, very supportive. And it was one of those things that I look back and I go, thank God they kind of figured out that was my thing. I still did a lot of sports. I was mediocre, but I did sports, and God, it was just like, yeah, did it, got through it. But the whole time, playing music, my dad bought me a first drum set. And then, like, he would come to the concerts and stuff, and very supportive. Like, I could come home from school and play my drums for a couple hours and never got any guff. Never told to stop it or shut up or anything. Of course, I didn't do it late at night. I just was respectful, and that was the way I was raised, I guess. But I was allowed to do that, and that was huge. And they kind of let me be really into music, and like I collected tapes, got music. I just would buy as much as I could. I had worked a job with my brother setting up tables at an Eagles club for $5 an hour. Like once a week, we worked 2 hours, and I'd take that $10 and we go right over to a record shop, which was the most important thing in my childhood, kind of too, because you go over there and just look through all these, and sometimes you buy stuff based off the album cover. You didn't know what it was, and that was like really cool, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But then that's when I got into cassettes, and then I had 300 cassettes at one time, and I stored them all next to an electric heater and lost half of those over the year. And I don't know where they are. And then it kills me because when the CD switchover went, it kind of just ruined a lot.
Do you remember the first tape do you remember the first piece of media that you ever bought?
Yes. It was the Rolling Stones. Tattoo You was the album, and I bought it for like $6 at a drugstore downtown with my own money. And I liked the song Start Me Up. I didn't even know it was Start Me Up. I didn't know what they were saying. And I heard it on the radio, but I went and found that album, and that was my first media album I purchased. And it's funny, one Christmas shortly after my brother got Boston double album set. I got the Village People, and I'm like, okay, but it was different times. YMCA was a big hit. Gosh.
Yeah. So you lost half these tapes because you sat them too close to a heater.
Yep. And then it was that switch over, and then like kind of when I left for college, I didn't bring a lot of them. And it was like that time where like I started trying to replace my cassettes with CDs, and it was not as easy. And and a lot of those cassettes too, I was doing the double cassette thing where you go borrow your friend's stuff and then just copy it on there. And it was a great time. So I had just tons of tapes that were just, there'd be two albums on one tape, the 90-minute tapes each side. But I just would collect music and then just listen to it at night, going to sleep. And, I still love collecting music. There's, for a while, the public library, when I had a CD burner on our first Apple or Mac, I would go to the library and you could check out as many CDs as you could. And I would just get tons and bring them back. And I would spend hours just downloading them. Because I just wanted to have them for myself and have that access to them. And I still have that library of those, which is great, considering now everything's kind of moved to streaming and whatnot. And that's kind of, it kind of bothers me. It changes it. I don't like it as much. I like the hard copy, kind of, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But you can't have all that stuff.
It's a lot of stuff, yeah.
No. But yeah, that was Rolling Stones was the first, big time. But I also really loved Devo as a kid because I saw that Channel 12 out of Broomfield, Colorado showed abstract stuff, and like Devo, I was like, what is this? And so as a kid, I really liked that band. And that didn't transfer over to a lot of other stuff, but because it was his own thing. But that guy, the drummer, created electronic synthsonic drums. He was the creator. And it's weird, he died of a brain tumor, and so did Neil Peart. And I don't know if there's any connection, but it's two drummers in my life that I really had a lot of respect for that were taken by brain tumors, which is
interesting.
Just weird. Yeah. I don't know. No connection, I'm sure, but it's just, yeah.
So your older brother was the golden child.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Go back to that. Golden child. He, in high school, he graduated 89. I was just getting into high school. He went to join the Navy, got hurt at boot camp, and they took him out of the Navy, got kind of released. He came back into town and in Denver, and him and his buddies went out and they got into a scuffle with some gutter punks, and he cut it short. They got a knife. He stabbed two guys, and then my dad was also, side note, was the mayor of our town at the time.
Okay.
One of the guys he's with was going into the military. They found out who he was. They came to him. He said it was my brother and his friend. And my brother I come home from wrestling practice in high school, and they're handcuffing my brother. And all I hear is my dad going, like, did you do this? And my brother, a week before, told me what had happened. So a whole week I was sitting there in my head freaking out. Like, I can't believe what he did. And no one died. No one, thank God.
Yeah.
No one, but the paper took it, said my brother was a skinhead, which he wasn't.
Oh, shit.
And then they said the paper was mayor's son skinhead stabs homeless person. And my brother was in the Denver County Jail waiting trial for a good year and a half, which the nightmare stories he told me were just insane. Like, but then he got sentenced 16 years.
Wow.
And at 18, he was 18 years old. So I hate that song 18 and Life to Go by, I don't know, that band. I cannot even hear that song. But at that time, like, my brother was a golden child. Everyone loved him. Whole town, everybody knew my dad. Everyone knew us. He went to the Buena Vista Correctional Facility. He ended up serving 8 years. But that destroyed my father, and then, like, it changed everything in my life and my younger brother's life in that town. People you thought were your friends were not. And a lot of talking behind your back, just like, it was such a horrible time, because then you're like, I actually felt, like, it made me feel just bad, and I had nothing to do with it, being attached to it. And I loved my brother, and I just couldn't believe what had happened. And it was just like it just destroyed our family. My dad was just unreachable for a while. And he never was really that, reachable, but it just you could tell it just destroyed him. And just the whole basic feeling from the town I got, it was why I really kind of left. I was like, my buddy's going to KU.
Let's go.
I got accepted. Yeah. I'm out. And it was like, just get the hell away from there. And I'm glad I did, because I went somewhere where people didn't know who I was, and I didn't have to talk about it. And then, of course, started dating somebody, whatever I'd have to explain, and then you get into it, and it was always like this pain, And every time I would go back to Colorado, and you had to drive all the way across Colorado to a prison. And then you go into a prison, and there's nothing worse than the visitation room at a prison. First getting there and waiting for a long time, then being searched, and then going, and that's not the bad part. Bad part was seeing families with their kids going to see their dad, and like they're just hanging out there to see their dad. And there I am going to see my brother, who is this, young man, and it could have went way worse. He got a degree in there in computer science. Used this time, you find out who your friends are, who will go with you and visit, who went and visited him. And that was just a horrible, like, he was in there 8 years. I felt like we were all in there in a degree. We weren't dealing with the psychopaths and the murder, the deaths, and all the horrible shit that you hear about prisons, which are true. But he got out and got a job with a company that would accept someone with a felony on their record, and made a bunch of money. And right before the computer market kind of dropped out, but he met a beautiful woman from London who was a ballet dancer. They got married. Everything was just going, things worked out for him. But that whole experience was so scarring, because you go from being just living your life and anything is possible to, like, your brothers, like, your whole family is it just was wrecked. And your idea of what, who I was wrecked. And it was kind of like I had to go find out who the hell I was. And the only thing in my life that I was still part was music that I could really hold on to.
Yeah.
And I really think that was what helped me specifically, and, get through it. And it changes your look on things. And, like, and people change, when people look at you differently, it really, it crushes you, but it opens you up, and it gave me a harsh reality of how life can be sometimes, and how people can be. because it broke my heart when like we got pulled over once with my mom in the car, and like cop was harassing my mom, like, "You're Melody, last name Melody, don't we know who you are?" I'm like, "Yeah, you know who we are.
Right.
Everyone
Right.
knows who we are." And like, to see your mom cry, break down, and this one thing, or to be going to a wrestling tournament and the kids come up and be like, "You're Dave Melody? It's your brother?" Because Bill was an amazing wrestler. You're Bill. And like soon after that, I got out of wrestling because I couldn't go anywhere. It was a stigma, and I just, God, I just wanted to leave. And you know, people that you grew up with treated you different, and it's just like you always thought that this is where you know, these people are like, when people look back at their high school and like you want to go back and visit. No,
Yeah.
I
No.
don't. I have a few of my friends that I'm still good friends with, but on the whole thing, like, no, not a positive time. Not, it wasn't like the best time of my life, you know. It really was. It was the harshest time, and it, like, I have felt a lot of resentment for a long
Yeah.
time, a long
What
time.
made you get over that resentment? What made you kind of, or have you softened on that? What did it teach you?
I well, to a point, I have, but I think it happens when you just get older and get a little more, like, I think actually having a kid and being like, you know what, or just to the point of like being good enough in music and being like, it helped me get me a confidence, I think, that doesn't matter what people think about you, you
Yeah.
know, because those people are still going to think these things about you when they hear your name. Um, music for me was never about like becoming famous. It just made me feel good when I do it. And it helped when I could, you know, be in a band with a group of guys and we're trying to do this one thing, and we're all just, we're a group, and it's like, this is it. We're gonna, you know, like True Cell, and like being on the road, and you're like a little gang almost, and you're
Yeah.
just like, it gives you, it's a sense of power. And then when you have people surround you and it's positive, there's nothing like it. And like, you know, and that, you know, I think that really helped. And just, you know, when my brother got out and got through, he went through another hardship when the computer stuff crashed, and his wife divorced him. And then, but he met a great person. And then just later now we can get together, and it's just about family. And
Mhm.
that's kind of, you learn that that's really what's important. And like being in a band, it's like the band is your family, and it's really important.
Yeah.
But I think it just being able to play music and actually kind of push it push it in the back is what it really did.
So that music really helped nourishes you in many ways.
Yeah, and that is a nourishment, and that's been what has really a huge nourishment, because there's been, you know, times like when I first got out, I lived under such a strict kind of regime and household that I never lived by myself, never was allowed to stay out late, because as soon as my brother got in trouble, it was like I was not allowed to do anything. My dad went into this like, nope, can I go out? Nope. Can it? Nope. And it was like, okay. So I kind of rebelled once I got out of the house and I moved to Kansas, for good or bad or you know, good or worse, because I learned, you know, like I
Yeah.
worked at a bar, was around a lot of drugs, and somehow made my way through the drinking and drugs, and to a point where it didn't take me, because I've had people I've seen go down.
Yes.
And recently, a lot of friends people I used to serve alcohol to, a couple of them died from
Yeah.
alcoholism. And it was like, I don't know where my strength for that comes from, but I always, with music, it's like, can't be too fucked up to play.
Exactly. Right.
Can't be too, and it's like, so that to it really
Yeah.
helped me out, because there's a show I'm gonna have to
Sure.
be, even if I wanted to be
Right.
drunk. But it'd be like, no, and you can't be too fucked up. Can't play high on coke.
No.
Can't play high, you know, on alcohol. Can't do
Yeah.
these things. And that really was like, music is more important.
100%, man.
And that was probably a huge nourishment in that it, you know, it kept me down, you know, a certain path because I never wanted to be effed up on stage, and because loss of control, not being able to play something that's meant so much to me. I think that was like not a point.
That's really interesting insight. You hear people say they wish they would have saw Sublime play back in the day. Well, no, you wouldn't have, because Bradley was always fucked up on heroin or drunk or something like that. Like, a Sublime show wasn't like a video or what you're hearing on the fucking radio. So that's great insight.
Yeah. And that to me that's so tragic, because like Sublime, that's great. God, that band, you're like, they should still be playing. You know, like there was nothing like them. They're like 311 was groundbreaking at their time. It was just like this really cool, bass heavy, funky, you know, reggae-ish. And then you feel like, you know, he had kid and wife, and you threw it away.
Yeah,
to a degree.
It is sad.
But with some people, some things are so powerful they can't control. I've been, I think, blessed in that I've been able to be on one side of that. I also lived in a house where all the girls, beautiful women, they got into heroin. And I saw this transformation from beautiful girls just covered in black and blue marks. And then they got busted, and they had my piano player who had no idea what was going on. He lived on one side, and my girlfriend lived there, and these girls did as well. They got popped with, they were having heroin sent from San Francisco. And to have a couple of days after my birthday, I see a FedEx truck, and I lived in a duplex on their side, and I see the duplex, and I'm like, oh, maybe my mom sent me something. So I opened the door, and there's 6 guys with guns drawn, and they're going into my neighbor's place where my girlfriend lives, and my piano player at the time, the border band. And they wanted, and the piano player, my friend Dave Johnson, he had no idea, did not do that, had no clue. They had guns in his face. They had him on the back saying, you're going to jail for a long time. And he's like, I don't know. And he did not know. They got the girls to finally give it up. And they got taken care of. But my friend Dave, it crushed him. And he ended up moving. He left Lawrence and moved back and it was like I lost a friend and an amazing piano player. Like, do you have a piano player in your band? Was so amazing.
Yeah.
And it was like, we'd have parties at night where we'd sit by the piano and he'd play and we'd just sing songs. And we had neighbors come over that weren't just college students or adult neighbors. They came over, and it was just like, it was such a scene, and it was like out of a movie or something. But that crushed him. And to see what that drug did to these beautiful girls, and then to one of my good friend at the time, it just changed everything. And I'm like, sticking needles in your arm is just not a good idea. And they luckily got through with these girls, but I was like, some people didn't, and they were telling me stories about shoving ice cube up someone's ass who was so to bring them out, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Right. I mean, yeah. Well, Dave, I'm glad that you that you never felt any of that stuff super hard and was able to find something to keep you going. And I'm sure having your son, that's another driving force. Speaking of your son, what's something you would tell younger Dave?
What I'd probably hugged younger Dave a little more. Yeah. Tell him I love him.
Yeah.
Because that to me, like my son, that's huge for me. Just telling him how much I love him. Sorry. And hugging him, because he, when he comes up, he sees probably having a tough time. He'll walk up and just hold me. And I'm like, that just nothing like in my life has ever done. So instantaneous. Been like, whew. But also to be like, the first time you see upset and you see how it affects someone around you, and it's like, whoa, okay, what I do has, reactions and can affect other people instantly.
Yeah.
And to just like, that right there, it's just like, and my parents love me very much.
Sure.
But it's just different parenting styles and stuff like that. And had a lot, when my dad passed, I was very angry at a lot of things. And it takes time to kind of let those things go. But having my son and being like, all right, you're not going to get a spanking, you know?
Exactly.
I'm not going to physically
Right.
threaten you or scare you
Right.
in any fashion. And we're going to talk things out and understand why.
Man.
And, you know, he's very young. And I just, yeah, I think I'm just going to try to do things a little differently,
Yeah.
you know?
I've got a buddy, so he had his kid late in life. I had my 4 kids super young. But what I like to say is that you guys that have your kids older, you've got that mentality, right? I was so young going through all my bullshit, you know?
See, I think about if I was going through my bullshit if I had my kid, I think I would not be a good dad. I would like to say I would be, but I don't know that.
Yeah. And so that's why everything works out the way it's supposed to. Now you get to be an amazing father with all those insights, you know, at that age.
And it is huge because like my thinking my parents, they were in their 20s.
Yeah.
And, you know, but yeah, still like having that it's huge. And I have a good friend of mine who I was his best man when he got married at 18. He had 5 kids and they're all grown and out of the house. And it's amazing. And I'm finally having one. And it was like, it was so different. But I don't think, you know, it's part of me goes, as soon as I had him though, I was like, man, I should have had him. I want more kids like that. But now me and my wife's like,
right.
And now I'm like, we're good. We're good.
This is it.
You know, we're good physically and everything.
Yeah.
We're good. And I still probably look like a grandpa at the school, but I don't feel like it.
So kind of wrap up here a little bit, but not kicking you off. Tell me some of your other passions. What are your other passions? What are your other hobbies besides what I know about Dave?
I love running.
Okay.
I've gotten into I like I could get up at work and I'll go run 5 miles, and I love just putting on music, and just my old iPod stuff, and it'll be just, and none of it's really new music. It's going to be like Big Audio Dynamite.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Devo or The Cult. I love the Cult. I don't know what it is about their first 3 albums. Or, you know, and just stuff I went and found stuff that I listened to when I was a kid, and I just put them on the playlist. And then I just let it go random. And I'll go run 5 or 6 miles. And I think that helps me kind of get out some stuff also, just to stay in shape for playing drums, because it's a physical activity. And
yeah,
it's another one of those things where just like, you gotta, you know, like if you're gonna play a 45-minute set and put your drum set up on a stage and then tear it down in a few minutes, you gotta be able to keep moving, and that helps me. But I've always liked running. I just got a point where I got away from it because I'd be working so much and be so tired. So in the last 5 years though, that's been huge to me, and it really helps me. And I think at a time now where I feel like I don't have any control over politics or things out of my control. It's one thing I can kind of control a little bit more is my body, what I intake, and, you know, being a little smarter about that and trying to be. But running just, it gets me out, and like riding bikes too would take, you know, but being with my kid, of course, it's fun to do things with him. Of course, I was trying to get him into baseball, and I'm like, we'll go up to Hobbs, and I got a whole bucket full of balls, and we'll practice batting practice. And he was wearing sunglasses, and like 5 pitches in, I hit him right in the face.
Oh, shit.
And it was a lob, but the glasses cut his forehead. Next thing, there's blood spouting everywhere.
Oh, poor dude.
And this, I know, we got the stitches and everything, and he's fine, but he's a little guy, and he's still like, remember when you hit me in the face with the baseball? I'm like, yes, I do. And he's going to remind me of that, I think, for the rest of my life.
Dave, I've got four grown daughters. He's going to remind you of that for a long damn time.
Wow. I would say, like, my wife, what keeps I have an amazing, everyone has if you have an amazing partner, she gets me and lets me do what I love. I've been in relationships where I dated a girl who pretty much liked me, I'm pretty sure, because I was playing in a band. And then as soon as I was dating her, she
Yeah.
wanted me not to be in the band anymore. And those kind of weird, like dysfunctional relationships in the past. I'm so glad that I met someone that I can talk to.
Where did you meet Sarah?
I was bartending, and like her friends would come in, and her the guy she was her friend, they were like they had a pact that they were going to find each other boyfriend girlfriend. They weren't dating; they just were like friends. And Damien was this big skinhead, and like not the Nazi kind, the Lawrence skinheads that used to.
Yeah.
And he came up and he's like, "Are you dating anybody?" I'm like, "No." And I'm like, "Who's that girl?" Because she had this really tight mini skirt on, and she was all punk rocked out. And I'm like, "She's really cute." And he just brought me over to me and sat me down in front of her, and that was it. And so, and we met like that, and it was funny because it's like you don't meet someone in a bar, and I'm like, "Yeah, you can,
You can,
you
yeah.
can." And we dated for like 8 years, and then we finally were like got married, and then we were married for a long time, and we got to a point and it was like, if we're going to have kids, we got to do it now because the clock is literally ticking. But she is my backbone, and she's like, she set up the computer to help me get going.
Yeah.
She's my IT, and we I like to think we really help each other out, and I don't know, just could tell her anything, and I know that she's smart.
Yeah.
Everything, I that I'm not, she is, which I mean, not say I'm not smart, but she's in different ways, and she gets things like the computers stress me out.
Sure.
I play drums, man. I've
Right.
been hitting things with sticks, with my love and anger for many years, and it's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
Well, that's awesome, man. Let's talk about They Watch Us from the Moon, and then let's talk about anything else you want to promote or anything else you got coming up and going on. So you mentioned
There's Flucto, and pardon me, They Watch Us from the Moon are my current project. Flucto, we just released an album called Rock and Roll Dum Dum.
Rock and Roll Dum Dum.
And it's got some, I don't know how to explain it. It's just rock and roll. And there's even instrumental on there. Chubby, who works for KNPR, the local public radio, he does sound there. He records symphony trios all the time. They pay him to do that, and then he on the side, and then he gives them the stuff. But he got a group to come in and do strings on on an instrumental. So we got a really cool, and it's kind of got a spacey background feeling to the album. We got it's a song called Rock and Roll Dum Dum. I'm just blanking on that, but that's a project that I really enjoy. But I'm also doing that with They Watch Us from the Moon, which I was not originally going to be in that band. Shane approached me about, let's do some stoner rock doom metal band. And I was like, because he's like, this is the new genre that people are jumping into, and it's becoming very popular. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, what is it? He goes, go online and just look for stoner rock or doom metal. And I'm like, did that, and I started listening to it. I'm like, okay, kind of Black Sabbath-y, but so we started rehearsing in Topeka in the ghetto. And I mean, in the ghetto, in this house where I'm like, at any moment we could be shot, I feel like. And we're just trying to get vocalists and struggling. It was another one of those things with musicians too, where you can find a right group, but then if everyone's not in, it doesn't work. So about 2 years in, he's like, well, the band They Watch from the Moon, he's put his whole heart and soul into. They contacted him pretty much the band, and we're like, we want to disperse. And he told me all a bunch of nightmare stories and stuff that I can't really speak too much of because I wasn't a part of the band, but it just didn't sound like it was very positive. And but so they're signed. We are signed to a label out of England. But he basically showed up and was like, "Do you guys want to do They Watch Us from the Moon?" I'm like, and he's like, "You're gonna wear costumes," and I was so kind of like, oh. And then I was like, you know what? I don't care. I'm like, this might be the thing. We're all getting older. Might as well. They might think I'm 20. They might, whatever.
Right.
They won't know who I am. I could go with, like, make up a name, like Miles Melodicon or something. That'll be my stage name, whatever. But so we start rehearsing that, and we had a singer who flaked out and quit. And then we got 2 more vocalists. And then a year, every time we get close to a show, we'd have somebody quit. And it was like, what is going? You find out people want to be rock stars till it gets real sometimes. And a show coming up, and it's kind of like we got to have the, And so just recently, our last 2 singers who we rehearsed with for over a year just quit. And we had a show coming up, and these shows are booked a year in advance, most of them. And thank goodness, because Shane works he can book these, so that's an in for us. But we found this 19-year-old Salem, and she is 19, and she's a 19-year-old, so she's 19.
Yeah.
But she can sing, and she seems to get it. And we had her for 4 weeks, and we did a show, and it was sold out with Castle Rat, and it was like, it went very well. And she got that vibe, and I think you feel that like power and energy from a whole room full of people who were like cheering at you. And she didn't get, you never know what people are going to do on stage too, and when they get in front of people, when you didn't know, is she going to tighten up, freeze up? Like, her mic wasn't even on. The sound guy was doing us wrong for a second, and she still held it together. And then it was amazing. And so that is finally moving.
Good.
And it's one of those things where it should be. And so we have a show this Friday at the ship. Oh my gosh. And I'm blanking on that, but we're just getting shows booking here. And like, we definitely have a show New Year's Eve.
Okay.
At the skate bar.
Yeah.
And I don't know when this is coming out, but that'll give plenty of time to promote that one. That'll be a New Year's Eve show, which we will headline. So we'll get to set up all our lights, lasers, and smoke machines.
No shit.
So I'm really excited about that. But, we're all dressed up in costumes. And it's like the whole idea, it's kind of like a band from the side of the moon. And like this new version of it is like the Blood Moon Cult is a kind of a new group, because the old band has been wiped out except for Shane. He's a surviving member, and we're all new parts of this new cabal, or what Shane was trying to explain to me. And he's got a whole like science fiction behind it,
okay,
which I can't give him. I can't do the respect that it deserves. But that draws people into. There's an actual comic book to it as well. And so that's kind of fun. We get to, it's science fiction and doom rock, and we all got, costumes. I get to wear a mask on, and I've been, my wife helped me put an LED light into it yesterday. So now I got this cool blue light laser shooting out of it. It also brings challenges. Playing in a mask is hard, but it's when you're sweating your butt off. And, so I've drilled tons of holes in it so I can breathe. But that project seems to be going well, and the bass guitar and lead guitar are Charlie Wolf and Rob Pope, and I played with those guys in our blues band Automatic Wolf.
Okay.
And I was really hesitant because we had a guitar player quit and a bass player, everyone was getting flaky, and I was like, I really like these guys. I've been playing in a band with these guys for 8-9 years, God, longer, 10 years maybe. And I was like, do I want to bring them into this, or will they do it? And they both agreed. And then, because I wasn't sure if this, I could ruin a friendship if things didn't go right with one other person, because you're bringing people together. But it just seems it's gelling. And, I couldn't be happier because I got all my friends in a band now, and we could go on the road, and like there's so much downtime. When you go play shows, you're sitting there for hours. You set up and you wait to play. And it's like I could spend just sitting there talking to these guys, and it's just like, this is perfect, There's no hang-ups. And we all just want to play music.
Yeah.
And we're all, besides Salem, we're all in our 50s.
Right.
So it's weird, but it's not to us, because I feel like, it's, you can still play, let's do it. And so we're still searching out our childhood dreams to become rock stars in one way or the other, or just be able to go play. And, and we're going to go do weekend plans, our weekend warrior stuff. We'll go to Nebraska, we'll play shows. We'll go to St. Louis, we'll go to Denver. And to me, that's exciting, because then I'm not away from my family all that much, but we're still going to get to do these things, and then to watch it build, and, like selling your merch, and to try to create this machine that other bands have done well. And it's not easy, but like Clutch, they've done that by themselves, and they're amazing, and they can keep doing that, and that's kind of where you want to be. Something like that. So, and the Flucto band, the other band, FluctoRock.com, that is more of us, some older guys getting together too, that just, this is what we do, is play music, and it's fun. And if you got someone who's willing to put the effort behind it, to record it, and which is amazing, then just do it, and it's a blessing, because it takes a lot to put music out and to play it. And, you just got to be a little crazy, and it's just got to be a part of your DNA. And I'm surrounded by people like that, and it's a blessing, and it's keeping me young at heart, and keeps me happy.
That's awesome, Dave, because you got that. It sounds like you got that community still that nourishes you too, with the music and everything like that. So
exactly, and that is the nourishment that is so important.
Man, I'm super, super happy for you. New Year's Eve at
the skate bar in Kansas City. They watch us from the moon. Yeah.
I ran into one of the guys. He was downtown last week. A skate bar van was down there, and he has all these stickers on it. And he was wearing a Typo Negative t-shirt. And right before I saw him, I saw a guy wearing a Wilco t-shirt. And the reason these things make sense, I saw these two guys back to back. Wilco was the first show I ever saw at the Bottleneck in the 90s.
Wow.
Typo Negative was the first band I ever saw anywhere on Mass Street, and I think it was at Liberty Hall. But I saw those two shirts back to back, and it was just like smack, smack, and took me right back.
Flood of memories, yeah. God, the Lawrence music scene, amazing.
So on that, when people talk to me, when they ask me now about the Lawrence music scene, all I seem to see, a lot of that horrorcore, and then a lot of roots, a lot of bluegrass, a lot of that seems to be.
And it's interesting, because the Americana and the bluegrass groups seem to get a lot more attention, and from the city, and kind of the metal doesn't. Even though I was talking to Shane about this, that in the Kansas City, Lawrence area, metal bands bring more money and more shows, and it's they're just not thriving. They're not giving them the same respect that the other was going, and that kind of hurts, because we are performing, and
yes.
It is an art, and we are doing art, and you don't get the same as you would from bluegrass and just even other art projects. People get paid to put up beautiful art downtown, and that's awesome. But you know what? Throw on a metal show downtown, maybe. And that that's like going back to the noise ordinance. That makes a big difference. People will listen to a banjo and a violin a lot, and a mandolin more than they will somebody screaming.
Right.
And it seems that way, but and there are some. It's kind of it's hard, because music now has to be an event. people don't go out like we did just to go see live music. Every night you could go, you get off, you go down to the Bottleneck, play pool for a few hours, and whatever band's coming in, you might stick around, you may not. And it'd be a different band every night because there was, but just in, I don't know, after COVID or just moving up into this, and also a lot of it had to do with once Ozfest and Lollapalooza became a thing, labels were like, okay, this is how we package our music now, because we can do that. And that shut off local acts from being able to participate. And Shane was, I was having this conversation with him about it because I was like, is it because the guy who booked all the gigs, like Jeff Bordier got too big and moved out? And he's like, no, he still books gigs here. It's like Ozzy Osbourne and Sharon Osbourne were one of the biggest culprits because they made the pay-to-play thing. You pay to go play on the Ozfest, and labels would put their bands and play to do that. But now it's more of a package deal, and I don't know if that speaks to too, like with kids too. Now it's different that they don't want to stay out late too. Your shows are going, the bands start earlier and end earlier, and for an older guy, that's great. But like I always remember as a kid, that's not how it goes, you know? And it's like, I remember going to do certain shows and the headliner wanted to play first. And I was like, in the last 10 years, and I'd be like, what? Well, and they'd play and then people would leave, of course. And then, but yeah, the music scene, there's still a music scene in Lawrence, but it's sadly, I don't think it won't be like when it was when we were lucky enough to do. And like we also had like William Burroughs was alive, and you would have famous people who just came to town.
Dude, yeah. Did you ever meet William?
Yeah, my pot dealer was his gardener.
No shit.
And when I say his gardener, he had a flower garden in his backyard the shape of a penis, but you wouldn't know it unless you saw it from above. But like I remember he took me over there twice, and I got to meet Burroughs. And I also got to see Burroughs just downtown. Like he'd be, like Allen Ginsberg came into town. You see these beat poets would come into town and they'd be at Free State on the patio or something. Or you'd see like Joan Baez, or like even like there's pictures of Kurt Cobain over at Burroughs' house, because Burroughs was just over on the east side. And he had this little house, and like there's famous pictures of him, like just with Kurt Cobain just hanging out, people just come and see him and talk to him. And it was just so, and like, what is it, Ministry? Yeah. They did a video out in Lawrence, What's One Fix, right out on the dirt roads. And so you had, to me, like, it was so sad when he passed, because all of that just seemed to go,
man.
It disappeared, and like the famous people stopped coming from Lawrence, Kansas to see the beat poet, who Naked Lunch,
Did you ever, because I know he used to do like the shotgun art at like the Outhouse and shit. Did you ever play at the Outhouse or see shows out there?
The thing is, I came here as soon as that was just the end. And it broke my heart, because I got right in it, and that's where I started playing music. And it was like, I missed all those stories, and some of it I'm kind of glad. They seemed pretty scary, but like, like Ice-T showed up there, and he was like, no, I ain't body count. And he was like, no, this is a joke. And no, he wanted to be paid first too.
Oh, no shit.
First. And they had guns that they had for their body count that were fake. The skinheads had real, they're like, oh, let me show you we got. They opened their trunks up. And they had real machine guns and stuff out there. No, I missed out on the Outhouse days, but was able to capitalize off of opening up for like the national acts that were going through. And I was just trying to think, because me and Shane were like going, I was asking him, who do we play with, and there was Bad Religion, Clutch, God, man. Millions of MDC, Sick of It All, a bunch of hardcore bands back in the day when we were in True Cell. But like one of my favorite compilations I'm on is the tribute to the Micronauts, and Burroughs plays a song on there. And I'm like, I'm actually on a compilation album with Burroughs is doing some poetry over a song. And I was like, man, that's pretty cool, man. But like the Bottleneck used to put out Loaded and Lawrence every year, and that being on those was cool, and that was like huge deal. Feel very lucky, and just kind of got wandered in. I was in a house with 3 drummers, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
Well, Dave, I want to thank you for your time. I've had a wonderful conversation, man.
I thank you. I really appreciate talking to you, and I was really nervous about this, but that was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah. Well, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on as one of my early guests, and what I'm figuring out early on in this podcast game is that finding guests is hard, and then coming together and finding a time. So I really thank you for that. But you were one of the first people that I even told about this, that I was going to start a podcast when I came in for an inspection one time, and you were very supportive of that when I was talking about it. And then I got sidetracked with doing audiobooks and some voiceover work. And that's what led me to even knowing how to get behind a microphone and how to work this shit. So it all works out, but
which is not easy. You had to learn a lot to get to this point. I mean, yeah, that's a whole thing. No, like when I first started, I first met you when you came in, the way you talked about music and the scene, it was like a ray of light. I could tell you love music, and I was just, so it was like, I felt like, yeah, you gotta talk. We could talk for hours, but we still got a job to do. But it was like, but anybody, who just have that much respect and love for the scene, who's not playing music, it was really refreshing and cool, and I really appreciate you asking me to do this. It's an honor, man. I'm
awesome. Well, I'm glad you feel that way, and it's been a real pleasure. And hopefully we get to do this again sometime. Go even deeper.
I'd love to. Yeah, would love. Yeah, there's still a lot out there. Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Dave. Take care. I was reflecting on my conversation with Dave for some takeaways from his story, and I had just begun reading The 7 Secrets of the Prolific by Hilary Reddig the day after our conversation. And she writes about luck being a part of different paths we take in life. And Dave also mentions luck a couple times in our conversation. The book includes this quote from Branch Rickey, the legendary baseball executive, who said, "Luck is the residue of design." Again, luck is the residue of design. This challenges the romanticized notion of luck as something random or magical, the overnight success story. That's a media myth. Instead, it's framed as something that emerges from intentionality, preparation, and consistent effort. Luck is a byproduct of deliberate choices and systems. In this framework, prolific creators aren't lucky because they stumble into success. They're lucky because they've designed workflows, have the mindset, and they create environments that make success more likely. And this is what happened with Dave. Lucky that Dave was the one home when Shane walked by. But from digging out that Muppet snare from the trash, to the mundane drills, intense practice, and the love of music and performing, is what got him the gig and led him to where he is in life, with the residue of design and a little drum luck. As we wrap up, I like what MC Yogi says. Practice makes progress. Forget about the outcome and focus on the process. Stay focused. Try to remember that 99% of what people do or say has nothing to do with you, so try not to take anything personal. Nothing other people do is because of you. Hey, if you guys check the show notes in the Morning Almonds Facebook page, I'm going to have links to Dave's bands and songs. There's going to be some promo pics there, and I also have some of my own personal flyers from the Outhouse that I'm going to pop up there and share. Thank you again for joining me today. And like Ram Dass says, all moments matter, as that is what brought you here. It's all an evolution to your awakening. The moment in the subway is just as important as the moment in the cathedral. I hope you stay right here for episode number 4 and my conversation with cellist and Professor Christina Gensch. Thanks again for your time. If this episode spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs a little nourishment. New episodes drop bi-weekly, so bring a friend, and let's help walk each other home.
This has been the Morning Almonds podcast. Please support local musicians, artists, and other creatives.